Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some of my least favorite classic books. I really enjoy classics. I tend to like most of the ones that I read, but these just did not work for me, and it is hard for me to DNF a classic. So I wanted just to go through, it's a short list, thank goodness, of all of the classic books that just didn't work for me. But before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways. The first book that I DNF'd is The Odyssey by Homer, and I actually have a gorgeous leather-bound Barnes & Noble edition of the Iliad and the Odyssey that I am never going to read. So I attempted to read the Odyssey in its entirety, and I just am not into Greek mythology at all, which is kind of weird because I'm a fantasy reader and I am very capable of suspending my belief, but I just find the tales just completely unappealing to me personally. I know that the Iliad is more, I guess, less centered around the gods and their machinations and more about the Battle of Troy, so I might give the Iliad a try. Let me know in the comments if the Iliad is more like about the war and less about gods interacting with man, but the Odyssey just didn't work for me. The next book is All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren. This is a book that I did own at one time and I unhauled it because I DNF'd it, and this is supposed to be like a political book. It's about a guy, I think his name's Willie Stark, who is trying to become governor of Louisiana or some southern state. And it follows, actually not Willie per se, but it follows like an advisor to Willie whose name is Jack. And when I first bought this book, I got it at the used bookstore. I thought it was going to be all about like the politics of the time. It was going to be all about, you know, Willie's rise to power and political corruption, and there is a plot line that has to do with that, but it's not the main plot line. The main plot line, in my personal opinion, is Jack, and Jack trying to figure out like his reason for living. What does life mean? And I really could not get on board with the writing style. The author would go on these extended metaphors, like they would take up half a page, as Jack's trying to like think about something about life and like compare it to something and like, you know, reconcile something in his mind, and it would turn into this long metaphor. And I got so bogged down with the metaphors, it was taking away from the actual story, the political story, that it just didn't work for me. I DNF'd it, and I don't think I'm going to try and finish it. The next one is probably a surprise, and that is Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I had never read anything by Mark Twain, and I've never read anything since, other than one short story in middle or high school. And I thought I was going to love Huck Finn, and I didn't. I think the main problem I had with Huck Finn was the fact that the story was very repetitive, or at least what I read, and the story just followed Huck, and he would get himself into trouble, and then he would have to work to get himself out of trouble, and everything would always seem to work out for him, and it like happened over and over and over, and I was like, is this the main plot? Is this what this whole book is about? Because I'm really bored. And then Mark Twain is also known for his use of vernacular, and I found it annoying. I really couldn't get into the language of the book or the story, and it really put me off from reading any more Mark Twain, which is really sad because he's such a celebrated American author. The next book is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. This was the first book of his I attempted to read. I heard that he was like a quote-unquote sci-fi author. You know me, I love some sci-fi. And first off, I want to say that Kurt Vonnegut actually was a prisoner of war during World War II, and this book follows a character that was a prisoner of war. So a lot of this story was drawn from his actual experiences in real life, which I found incredibly interesting. My problem with this book is that it was separated into three kind of different timelines, or three different stories. So you would have the present day timeline, you would have where he would go into flashbacks about his time being a prisoner of war, and then you would almost go into like this future timeline that had to do with like spaceships and aliens almost. And it was just really confusing to jump around between these three different stories, and I don't think that it was done seamlessly. Like, it was very jarring. For me, it was hard to follow. And I really didn't feel much of a connection to the main character. In fact, I really didn't like him all that much. And just that futuristic timeline just didn't fit in to the rest of the story for me personally. And this is another example where having a bad experience with this author first go has put me off from reading any more of his books. And this is considered one of his better books, and it just didn't jive with me. Next, we have Paradise Lost by John Milton. This is an epic poem, and it has to do basically with the fall of man, the original sin, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And I thought I would personally love this poem, and I had a lot of trouble with it. Like, I think it's the narrative structure. I mean, I can read poetry, but I don't think I've ever read like an entire 300-page book, and I had a lot of trouble following along, and I had a lot of trouble staying interested because of the format. And I also listened to part of this on audiobook, and it was through LibriVox. So if you're not familiar with LibriVox, it is a volunteer-based like audiobook service, and most of the audiobooks that they do are classics because they're in the public domain. And I was listening to part of this on audio, and the narrator just wasn't good. Like, he was adding all of these sound effects that it was not good. So I think the bad audiobook narration and experience put me off on this book more than the actual story and writing. But I just have no desire to pick this up anytime soon again. Next, we have The Once and Future King by, oh gosh, his last name's White, I believe. I can't remember his first name, but yeah, this one. And this is like a classic fantasy, and it's the tale of King Arthur and the Sword and the Stone, which I thought that I would absolutely love this book. I truly did. I love Arthurian tales. I love Arthurian retellings. I find them fascinating how, you know, a lot of history of that part of the world is incorporated into the story. No one knows if King Arthur actually existed or not, or Camelot actually existed. But the problem that I had with this book is I found it very cartoonish. That's the only way I can think to explain it. So there was this one scene where Merlin was doing magic, like in this cottage or house or something. And the way that the author was describing how he was using magic and making things float and like all this stuff reminded me of a scene from like a Disney cartoon movie. And I don't know, it didn't work for me. I really had trouble getting into it or liking the characters, the writing style, the way things were described. It just wasn't, I guess, mature enough or serious enough for me. I don't really know how else to describe it. I thought I would love this book. I didn't. It's just an Arthurian tale that wasn't one of my favorites. And then we have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. And I feel like this is the most controversial because this book is so well loved, so well loved. And this book I actually did finish. By the way, all the other books I DNF'd. And I remember finishing it and thinking, holy cow, that was the biggest waste of my time. So if you don't know what this book is about, it follows a man who is put into a mental institution, and he kind of begins a revolt amongst the inmates to oppose this nurse who is abusing her power, essentially. But it was very, very misogynistic, and I am not one that will point that out, because when you're reading classics, you have to read through the lens of the time period. So one of my favorite books I read a couple years ago was Robinson Crusoe. That book was written, I think, in the 1700s, and there were obviously some issues with how he treated the indigenous people of the island he landed on. But if you're looking at it through the lens of the 1700s, it makes sense how he acted. If you're looking at it from 2021, there's definitely problems with it. But this book, like, was it like this in the 60s? Like, was this the way that, like, men thought about women in the 60s? I wasn't born then. If you were, let me know. Or is the author just way, like, over-exaggerating the misogyny in this book? It was horrible. And I really didn't care for our main character because he was put into jail for, like, assault. So he was just not even a character that I could sympathize with. But all he did was, like, talk about Nurse Ratched and her body and how she was, like, denying being a woman. And then he brought in, like, prostitutes for the men to, like, sleep with inside of the asylum. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and link my Goodreads review down in the description box because I actually pulled some quotes from the book that really communicate the overall, I guess, tone of the book way better than I'm doing right now. just know that it didn't work for me. I didn't like it. I can't recommend it, and it's probably one of the least favorite books that I have ever read. Okay, you guys, so those are some of the least favorite classics that I have read in my lifetime. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, or if you have some classics that you just really didn't like. Maybe it's one of my favorites, you never know. And I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye.